First contact gone wrong. Captain Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck of the UES Hawking, watching the distant specks of light that marked the mining operation on asteroid KB-2994. After 6 months of surveillance, Command had finally given the green light for intervention. What had started as a routine resource survey in the Kuiper Belt had turned into humanity's first major interstellar crisis. "Latest scans are in, Captain," Lieutenant Rodriguez reported, his holographic image flickering slightly in the dim light. "Their energy signatures are unusual. They're not matching any known patterns in our database." Sarah frowned, studying the detailed analysis floating before her. The alien mining operation appeared deceptively primitive at first glance, a hodgepodge of drilling equipment and prefab habitats clutching the asteroid's cratered surface. But something about it had always felt off. "Show me the temporal analysis again," she ordered, gesturing at the data stream. The energy readings pulsed in irregular patterns, almost like a heartbeat. "They're either using the most inefficient mining equipment in the galaxy, or they're hiding something," Rodriguez finished. "Engineering's been trying to make sense of it for weeks. Whatever tech they're using, it's beyond our current understanding." Sarah had argued against military intervention. First contact protocols existed for a reason, and charging in with guns blazing seemed like a spectacular way to start an interstellar war. But after the aliens had fired on 3 separate diplomatic vessels attempting to establish communications, Command had lost patience. "Status of the fleet?" she asked, turning away from the viewport. "The Magellan and Einstein are in position. Strike teams are prepped and ready. We're just waiting on your order, Captain." Sarah took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders. Humanity had come too far to back down now. The Kuiper Belt represented their first real chance at sustainable expansion beyond the inner solar system. They couldn't allow an unknown alien presence to jeopardize that. "Send the final warning," she ordered. "If they don't respond within 30 minutes, we proceed with Operation Clawhammer." The next half-hour passed in tense silence. Sarah used the time to review the assault plan one final time. 3 ships, carrying the best-trained space combat teams humanity had to offer. Their mission was simple: secure the mining facility, detain any alien personnel, and gather intelligence on their technology and intentions. The warning deadline came and went without response. Sarah gave the order, and the fleet began its approach. Multiple energy spikes. Rodriguez's voice cracked with alarm. "They're powering up something big." Before Sarah could respond, brilliant purple light erupted from the asteroid's surface. What they had assumed were simple drilling rigs transformed, unfolding like mechanical flowers to reveal sleek weapon arrays. "Evasive maneuvers," Sarah shouted, but it was too late. The first volley caught the Einstein amidships, purple energy washing over its hull like liquid fire. The ship's shields held, but the readings were catastrophic. Shield capacity down to 40%. The tactical officer reported, "Whatever they're hitting us with, it's cutting through our defenses like they're not even there." Sarah's mind raced. Their intelligence had been completely wrong. This wasn't some primitive mining operation. It was a military installation disguised as one. And they had just walked right into it. "Launch strike teams now," she ordered. "Get our people on that rock before they can power up for another shot. Rodriguez, coordinate with the Magellan. I want suppressing fire on those weapon emplacements." The battle erupted in earnest. Strike shuttles launched from all 3 ships, racing toward the asteroid's surface as the fleet engaged in evasive maneuvers. The alien weapons were devastatingly powerful, but seemed to require significant charge time between volleys. It was the only advantage they had. "First shuttle has landed," Rodriguez reported. "Team Alpha is deploying." "Wait, Captain, you need to see this." The tactical display shifted, showing helmet cam footage from the ground team. Sarah's blood ran cold. The aliens weren't just defending the asteroid, they were transforming it. Entire sections of the surface were shifting, revealing hidden hangars and defense platforms. And emerging from these openings were creatures unlike anything humanity had encountered before. Two distinct species moved in perfect coordination. The first were tall, ethereal beings that seemed to float above the ground, their bodies wrapped in what looked like living technology. The second were shorter, heavily built humanoids with crystalline growths protruding from their bodies. Both were clearly ready for combat. "Fall back," Sarah ordered, but even as she gave the command, she knew it was too late. They weren't just outgunned. They had stumbled into something far bigger than a simple territorial dispute. This was a prepared position, and humanity had just announced their presence in the worst possible way. The alien counterattack began, and with it, humanity's first real interstellar war. As Sarah watched her carefully planned assault fall apart, one thought kept running through her mind. They weren't just dealing with advanced technology. They were dealing with species that had been waiting for someone exactly like them to make exactly this mistake. "All ships, emergency protocols," she commanded. "We're not here to win anymore. We're here to survive and warn Earth. Whatever these beings are, whatever their purpose here, this isn't just about mining rights anymore. This is about the future of our species." The battle for Asteroid KB 2994 had begun, and with it, humanity's true introduction to the wider galaxy, not with handshakes and treaties, but with fire and blood. The coming hours would determine whether they were ready for what awaited them among the stars. The trap springs. Shield breach on Deck 7. The report cut through the chaos on the Hawkins Bridge. Captain Chen gripped her command chair as another blast rocked the ship. The purple energy weapons had proven far more devastating than anyone could have predicted. Through the tactical display, she watched the Magellan attempt a desperate maneuver, using the asteroid's irregular gravity field to slingshot around its southern pole. The Einstein was already crippled, venting atmosphere from multiple hull breaches. "Ma'am," Rodriguez's voice was steady despite the situation. "Analysis just cracked their communication patterns. You need to hear this." The bridge speakers crackled with alien transmissions, automatically translated by the ship's eye. Two distinct patterns emerge: the crystalline tones of the lithoids and the flowing, almost musical language of the void wavers. "Another seed species takes the bait," one voice chimed. "Primitive tactics, as expected. Add them to the catalog." "Classification," another responded. "Their technology suggests early Phase 3 development. Reaction drives, basic shield matrices." Sarah's blood ran cold. They weren't just defending territory. They were studying humanity, categorizing them. The entire mining operation had been an elaborate test, and humanity had failed spectacularly. "New contact," Tactical shouted, multiple signatures emerging from the asteroid's dark side. The hidden fleet revealed itself, sleek vessels that seemed to bend space around them, commanded by the void wavers, and massive crystalline structures that could only be lithoid warships. They had been there the whole time, watching, waiting. But something caught Sarah's attention. The alien ships, while incredibly advanced, followed predictable patterns. Their movements were almost textbook. "Rodriguez," she called out, "compare their fleet movements to known tactical databases. Find me a match." The lieutenant worked furiously at his station. "Got it. They're using formations similar to 21st century naval warfare patterns. It's like they're working from an old playbook." A desperate plan began forming in Sarah's mind. If these beings had been studying developing civilizations, cataloging their military responses, then perhaps they had become too reliant on predicted behaviors. "All ships, this is Captain Chen. Implement Protocol 0. "Ma'am." Rodriguez looked up in shock. "That's a last resort measure. We'll lose all advanced targeting systems, shield harmonics, everything." "Exactly." Sarah smiled grimly. "We're going primitive." Protocol 0 was developed as a failsafe against cyber warfare, stripping ships down to their most basic functions. No advanced computers, no complex systems, just basic thrust, manual targeting, and human intuition. The effect was immediate. The alien weapons, designed to bypass modern shield frequencies, suddenly found themselves hitting simple titanium armor. Their predictive targeting systems, expecting complex evasive algorithms, were met with raw human piloting. "They're adjusting," Rodriguez reported, "but their response time is slower, like they're having to manually update their tactical approach." Sarah opened a channel to the surviving strike teams on the asteroid's surface. "All ground forces, switch to ballistic weapons and analog communications. Mark your targets with UV paint for visual targeting. Let's show them what humanity can do with basics." The battle shifted. What had been a one-sided slaughter became something else entirely. Human forces, stripped of their advanced technology, began exploiting gaps in the aliens' expectations. Strike teams used mining charges instead of plasma weapons, creating confusion among enemies used to dealing with more sophisticated attacks. "Lithoid command ship is moving to intercept," Tactical announced. "They're charging their main weapon array." "Perfect," Sarah smiled. "Spring the trap." The Einstein, previously thought crippled, suddenly burst to life. Its damaged sections had been a ruse, allowing it to drift into perfect firing position. With its systems running on bare minimums, it had been nearly invisible to the aliens' advanced sensors. "Fire solution computed," manually, Rodriguez announced with pride. "Old school trigonometry, ma'am." "Send our regards," Sarah ordered. The Einstein's main gun, running on simple electromagnetic principles rather than advanced energy matrices, fired. The depleted uranium slug, accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed, struck the lithoid vessel at its exact center of mass. No shields or advanced defenses activated. They hadn't been designed to stop something so primitive. The crystalline ship shattered, its pieces creating a deadly field of shrapnel that forced the other alien vessels to adjust their formations. "They're falling back," Rodriguez announced, regrouping near the asteroid's northern hemisphere. But Sarah knew this wasn't over. If anything, they had just proved themselves even more interesting to their watchers. This wasn't just about territory anymore. It was about survival, adaptation, and proving that humanity deserved its place among the stars. "Send word to Earth," she ordered. "Tell them everything we've learned. And add this: we're not backing down. These beings want to study us, catalog us. Fine. Let's show them something they've never seen before." As her crew worked to fortify their position, Sarah studied the tactical display. The alien fleet was regrouping, but their movements seemed less certain now. For the first time, they were facing a species that refused to play by their rules. The trap had sprung, but the hunters were learning a harsh lesson about their prey. Humanity might be less advanced, but they were far from primitive. And sometimes, the simplest solutions were the most effective. The real war was just beginning. Turning the tables. The makeshift command center deep within asteroid KB 2994 hummed with activity. 3 weeks had passed since the initial battle, and humanity had done what it did best: adapt and improvise. Captain Chen studied the holographic display showing their position, now fortified using mining equipment repurposed into defensive installations. "Status report on Project Retrograde," she asked, turning to Dr. Amanda Walsh, the civilian engineer they'd managed to rescue from a research station near the asteroid. "It's beautiful in its simplicity," Walsh replied, pulling up schematics on a battered tablet. "We've taken their abandoned mining equipment and essentially turned it inside out. These aliens are so focused on quantum computing and energy weapons that they completely overlook the potential of hydraulics and chemical propulsion. The evidence of their success surrounded them. Captured alien technology lay partially dismantled around the chamber, its seemingly magical properties stripped away to reveal surprisingly vulnerable core components. Humanity had discovered something shocking. Advanced technology had made their enemies predictable. "Show me the latest intercepts," Sarah ordered. The communications team had gotten better at decoding the alien transmissions, revealing a fascinating picture of their opponent's psychology. "The Void Weavers are particularly frustrated," Rodriguez reported, now serving as her ground operations coordinator. Direct quote. They're using techniques that predate spaceflight. Our predictive matrices are useless against such technological regression. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. And the lithoids. They're even more confused. They keep trying to analyze our primitive weapons for hidden complexity. They can't accept that we're actually using chemical explosives and kinetic projectiles. The aliens' bewilderment had become their greatest advantage. Both species had evolved past the need for simple solutions, their technology so advanced it had become a crutch. They couldn't comprehend a civilization choosing to use inferior methods. "Dr. Walsh, show them the scrappers," Sarah ordered. The engineer activated a video feed from the asteroid's surface. Heavily modified mining exoskeletons, stripped of their advanced guidance systems and controlled purely by human pilots, were systematically dismantling a downed Voidweaver ship. The alien vessel's exotic materials proved surprisingly vulnerable to simple cutting torches and hydraulic crushers. "Every piece we salvage teaches us more about their weaknesses," Walsh explained. "Their hull materials are designed to resist energy weapons and quantum disruption. But good old-fashioned mechanical stress, they never bothered to account for that." A lieutenant burst into the command center, excitement visible, even through his makeshift pressure suit. "Captain, the lithoids just tried another probe of Section 7. You're going to want to see this." The tactical display shifted to show the defensive perimeter. What had once been simple mining drills had been converted into massive railguns, using electromagnetic principles that predated spaceflight. The alien probe, expecting to encounter advanced defense systems, had instead been met with supersonic chunks of asteroid rock. "They still don't understand," Rodriguez marveled. "Their shields are calibrated for energy weapons and exotic particles. They never expected us to just throw rocks at them. Really, really fast." Sarah studied the debris field from the failed probe attempt. "How are we doing on Project Slingshot?" Walsh's eyes lit up. "The mass driver is almost ready. We've stripped every mining vessel's propulsion system and linked them together. It's crude, but it works. One shot from that, and even their biggest ships will have a very bad day." The command center shook slightly as another alien bombardment tested their defenses, but their position, burrowed deep into the asteroid's core and reinforced with simple steel and rock, held firm. The aliens' energy weapons, while devastating against modern materials, struggled to penetrate hundreds of meters of solid stone. "They're adapting, though," Sarah cautioned. "Each attack shows more tactical variation. We need to strike before they figure out how to counter our primitive approach." "That's the beauty of it," Walsh interjected. "They can't adapt without fundamentally changing their technology and tactics. They'd have to regress centuries of development, relearn principles they've long forgotten. And their entire civilization is built on the assumption that advancing technology is the only path forward." Sarah nodded, understanding the implications. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology. It was their ability to use any tool, any method, no matter how simple or advanced, to survive. "New contact." The sensor operator's voice cut through the discussion. "Multiple signatures entering the system. But these are different." The tactical display updated, showing a new fleet approaching. These ships moved differently, using a mix of technologies that seemed both advanced and crude. Their energy signatures were chaotic, unpredictable. "We're receiving a transmission," Rodriguez announced. It's in perfectly clear English." A new voice filled the command center, carrying the hint of amusement. "Heard you folks were giving the catalogers a hard time. Thought you might like to know you're not the first species to figure out their weakness. We've been waiting for someone else to join the resistance." Sarah exchanged looks with her officers. The game had just changed again. But this time, the change felt like hope. "This is Captain Chen of Earth," she responded. "We're very interested in comparing notes." As the new fleet drew closer, Sarah realized humanity had stumbled into something far bigger than a territorial dispute. They had exposed a fundamental flaw in the dominant civilizations of the galaxy. the assumption that technological advancement only moved in one direction. The real revolution was just beginning, and it would be fought with everything from sticks and stones to quantum computers. Because true advancement wasn't about the tools you used, but how you used them. The Great Deception. The war room within Asteroid KB 2994 had transformed. Representatives from 7 different species gathered around a makeshift conference table, each bringing their own story of resistance against the catalogers. Captain Chen studied their unlikely allies with fascination. The Pyrians, a species of plasma-based beings, had escaped classification by deliberately regressing their technology to match their environment. The Meridians, who resembled elegant insectoids, had maintained a facade of primitive development while secretly building their strength. And the Nexus Collective, a hybrid species of organic and mechanical life, had learned to camouflage their true capabilities beneath layers of apparent technological incompetence. The catalogers have been doing this for millennia, explained Arkson, the Pyrian representative, his form flickering like a controlled flame. They find developing civilizations, test them with artificial conflicts, and categorize their responses. Those who fail become study subjects. Those who pass, well, we're the first to really pass in their terms. By failing spectacularly, Sarah added with a wry smile. Exactly. Arkson's flame brightened, and what she had learned was their equivalent of laughter. They don't know how to handle species that can adapt backwards. Their entire civilization is built on the premise that advancement only moves forward, toward more complexity. Dr. Walsh spread out their collected data on the catalogers' technology. We've identified their fundamental weakness. Both the Voidweavers and Lithoids have completely forgotten their technological roots. They can't comprehend or defend against anything they consider obsolete. Which is why, the Meridian representative chittered, we believe the time has come for a coordinated strike. Our numbers have finally reached critical mass. The tactical display activated, showing the positions of various resistance forces throughout the sector. What had seemed like scattered, primitive outposts were revealed as cleverly disguised staging areas. The catalogers' own assumptions had created their blind spot. Our plan, Sarah began, is to use their classification system against them. Each of our species will present as a different level of technological development, creating a chaos they can't predict or categorize. Rodriguez, who had been coordinating with the Allied forces, brought up their battle simulation. The Pyrians will appear as pre-industrial, using their natural plasma abilities disguised as primitive fire weapons. The Meridians will present as early space age, similar to humanity's current apparent level. The Nexus Collective will show mid-level advancement, just enough to draw their full attention. And humanity? Arkson asked, his flame dancing with curiosity. Sarah's smile turned predatory. We're going to be the ultimate variable. Some of our forces will appear completely primitive. Others will demonstrate advanced capabilities we've reverse-engineered from their own technology. We'll be technological chaos incarnate. The cataloger's entire system is based on predictable technological progression, Walsh added. When faced with multiple species demonstrating multiple tech levels simultaneously, their classification systems will fail. They won't be able to determine appropriate response levels or predict tactical approaches. The Nexus Collective's representative, a being of shifting mechanical and organic components, spoke in perfectly synthesized English. Our analysis suggests a 78% probability that this will trigger a catastrophic failure in their decision-making hierarchy. They literally cannot process technological regression as a valid strategic choice. Sarah activated the final phase of their battle plan. While they're trying to categorize and respond to our apparently chaotic development levels, the real strike begins. Every piece of their own technology we've captured has been modified, stripped down, and repurposed. When they scan us, everything will read as primitive or non-functional. Until we activate them all simultaneously, Walsh finished. Their own weapons and systems modify to operate on simple principles they've forgotten. The ultimate technological betrayal. The gathered representatives studied the plan in silence. It was audacious, requiring perfect coordination between species that had only just met, but they all recognized the historic opportunity it presented. "There's something poetic about it," Arkson observed, using their own technological arrogance as the weapon that brings them down. Sarah nodded. "The greatest deception isn't hiding your strength. It's making your strength appear as weakness until the perfect moment." The final preparations began. Each species took their assigned role in the Great Deception. Mining equipment was modified into weapons platforms. Sophisticated alien technology was stripped and rebuilt to operate on primitive principles. Communication systems were deliberately downgraded to appear less advanced than they were. As Sarah watched the transformation, she reflected on the irony. The catalogers had spent millennia studying how species advanced and evolved, never considering that true adaptation meant being able to move in any direction necessary for survival. The signal came 3 days later. The catalogers' main fleet had been detected entering the system, presumably to finally deal with what they saw as an irritating primitive insurgency. "All forces," Sarah broadcast to their combined fleet. "Remember your assigned technological levels. Let them see exactly what they expect to see, until they don't." The greatest trap in galactic history was about to be sprung, and its success depended not on technological superiority, but on the ability to understand and exploit the psychological blind spots of a civilization that had forgotten its own origins. The war for technological freedom was about to begin. Victory through ingenuity. The catalogers' fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, a display of technological superiority that would have once inspired awe. Now, Captain Sarah Chen saw only rigid predictability in their movements. The massive Voidweaver vessels rippled with purple energy, while the crystalline lithoid ships refracted starlight like artificial constellations. "All resistance forces, execute Operation Babel," Sarah commanded from the modified bridge of the Hawking. The ship, like everything else in their arsenal, had been transformed. Its outer hull now appeared crude and patched, masking the ingenious modifications beneath. The trap was sprung in layers of calculated chaos. The Pyrians emerged first, their ships appearing to be little more than primitive solar sailors, powered by their own plasma forms. The catalogers responded exactly as predicted, dispatching their smallest vessels to deal with what they classified as a pre-stellar civilization response. "First layer of deception confirmed," Rodriguez reported. "They're categorizing and segregating their forces based on perceived threat levels." The Meridians came next, their vessels demonstrating what appeared to be early FTL capability. Again, the catalogers divided their forces, unable to conceive of coordinated action between species of different technological levels. "Their battle computers are struggling," Walsh's voice came through, thick with satisfaction. "They're detecting multiple technological signatures that shouldn't coexist. The classification systems are starting to show strain." The Nexus Collective revealed themselves third, displaying mid-level technology that drew the attention of the catalogers' main fleet. The trap was nearly complete. "All human forces," Sarah broadcast, "initiate technological chaos." What followed would be studied in military academies for centuries to come. Human ships began operating at seemingly random technological levels. Some appeared to be using chemical rockets, others demonstrated advanced energy weapons, while others seemed to flicker between different tech levels entirely. "Their flagship is broadcasting on all frequencies," Rodriguez announced. "They're demanding we stop violating technological progression protocols." Sarah allowed herself a grim smile. "Send our response. Classification is obsolete." The signal triggered their final gamut. Every piece of captured and modified cataloger technology activated simultaneously. Mining lasers rebuilt with primitive focusing crystals cut through sophisticated shields. Railguns using salvaged alien power cores launched projectiles at speeds that violated the cataloger's understanding of physics. "Their fleet formation is breaking down," Tactical reported. "They can't maintain their classification-based response protocols. Their entire command structure relies on clear technological hierarchy." The Pyrrhians revealed their true nature, their primitive solar sails transforming into weapons that channeled stellar plasma with devastating precision. The Meridian's apparent FTL drives were unveiled as something far more sophisticated, allowing them to phase through the cataloger's defensive screens. Multiple targets are going dark, Rodriguez called out. Their systems are failing. Wait, they're not failing. They're shutting down. They can't process what they're seeing. The cataloger's mighty fleet, faced with technology that defied classification, began to paralyze itself. Ships stopped responding as their tactical computers encountered paradoxes they couldn't resolve. Advanced weapon systems failed to fire because they couldn't determine appropriate response levels. This is Commander Arkson. The Pyrrhian leader's voice crackled through. Their flagship shields are down. They never conceived of defending against multiple technological levels simultaneously. Captain Chen, would you like to do the honors? Sarah nodded to her weapons officer. The Hawking's main gun, a hybrid of human ingenuity and alien technology stripped to its basic principles, fired a single shot. The projectile, wrapped in a field of borrowed Voidweaver energy and accelerated by repurposed lithoid crystals, struck the cataloger flagship at its core. The massive vessel didn't explode. Instead, it simply came apart, its sophisticated systems unable to compensate for an attack that violated their fundamental understanding of technological progression. All resistance forces, press the advantage, Sarah ordered. Don't let them recover their classification protocols. The battle transformed into a rout. The catalogers, unable to adapt to an enemy that freely moved between technological levels, found their entire military doctrine useless. Ships either retreated in disarray or surrendered to the resistance forces. Hours later, in the Asteroid's command center, Sarah stood with representatives from all the allied species as they received the cataloger's formal surrender. Your species will be classified as, the Voidweaver ambassador began, before Sarah cut them off. No more classifications, she stated firmly. That's the first term of our victory. Technology serves us, not the other way around. Every species has the right to develop as they choose, to use whatever tools best suit their needs. The lithoid representative's crystalline form vibrated with what might have been confusion. But without proper technological progression, how will order be maintained? Order? Sarah gestured to the assembled allies. Look around you. We've proven that true advancement isn't about moving in one direction. It's about understanding all paths, all tools, and choosing the right ones for each challenge. As the surrender terms were formalized, Sarah reflected on humanity's journey. They had entered the galactic stage expecting to prove their advancement, only to discover that their greatest strength was their ability to embrace both progress and regression, complexity and simplicity. The age of rigid technological classification was over. A new era was beginning, one where innovation meant understanding that sometimes the oldest solutions were the best ones, and true wisdom lay in knowing when to advance and when to return to basics. The stars themselves seemed to shine brighter, welcoming a future where technology served life, rather than defining it. Humanity had not just survived their first interstellar conflict, they had helped reshape the very nature of galactic civilization. And they had done it not by being the most advanced, but by being the most adaptable.